For this month's Epiphany Experts, we're back onto the topic of Facebook once again, and there's quite a key item that's been talked about in the news surrounding Facebook recently, and that's that they're going to start integrating adverts into the main newsfeed, which is something that they've never done before. Now, the adverts that they're going to move across are their sponsored story adverts, and I know it's something that I've talked about before, but just as sort of a refresh of what sponsored stories are, I'll just give a give a quick overview. So, sponsored stories previously have been shown on the right hand side alongside the traditional PPC ads that you see on Facebook. And what a sponsored story is essentially, it's shown only to users that have interacted with a page, or to the friends of users that have interacted with a page, a brand page on Facebook. What tends to happen is I think there are 7 types of sponsored stories adverts that you can use at present, and they are a page like. So if one of your friends ends up liking a page, that will show to your friends. You can even push the content of your page directly to your own fans. So for example, you've posted something on a page and you might have, say, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000 people that like your page. It's very hard to guarantee that they'll all see that, because it can be easily lost in the news feeds of users when they log on to Facebook. So what you can do is you can specifically promote that directly to your own fans in the form of a sponsored story ad, and that would always show on the right hand side, so that you have a guaranteed spot to push that content out to. You can have a page post like as another sponsored story. So like say if someone posts, if you post something on your page, either just a status update or a link back to a post on your site, anything like that, if someone comments or likes that individual post, that can be turned into a sponsored story and shown to that user's friends. Another again is if you interact with an app or a game played on a specific page on Facebook, that again can be turned into a page like. So for example, with the new timeline, Spotify is an app that now plugs into Facebook, and so does The Guardian. You might have seen friends of yours that have recently read stories on the Guardian app. That kind of sponsored story will just turn that into an ad to say that your friend has interacted with the Spotify or Guardian app, for example. Another is if a specific story within an app that's been shared. So using the Spotify example, if you listen to a particular song, that could be turned into a sponsored story ad to show their friends, or likewise with The Guardian, if you read a particular story, that can be turned into an ad. Another is check-in. So obviously on mobiles, on smartphones, if you check into a particular organisation or a company, say Starbucks for example, that could be turned into an ad to say that you've checked in there. And then finally, it's domain. So if someone's on their website has got a load of Facebook like buttons for particular products or stories, and you like something, that will obviously post onto your own Facebook wall, but that could be turned into a sponsored story too. Or vice versa, if you post a link in your status update saying I like this product from, say, Amazon for example, they'll be able to detect, they'll link that link back to Amazon, which in turn links it to their Facebook page, and that could be turned into a sponsored story to say that you've talked about it and then shown to your friends as well. So those are the range of sponsored story ads that are out there at the moment. Initially there was probably only a few of them, and they consisted of page likes and check-ins and page posts, but as I've described, there's a whole load of them now, so there's a huge opportunity for advertisers to turn these kind of interactions into content. Now, in terms of how well they work, there's a lot of studies that have shown that sponsored story ads tend to have a 46% higher click-through rate than traditional Facebook ads. So a great scope to obviously start using those if you want to try and gain some more interaction. And probably if we're talking about moving it across into the newsfeed, we could only probably see that rate go up even higher when they go into a more prominent position. Now, in terms of the sponsored stories themselves, when they move across into the newsfeed, it's only going to be one sponsored story in the newsfeed per day, which probably will prevent the sort of spam element of there. And users won't actually be able to opt out of sponsored stories altogether, but they will be able to there's an X next to it, each ad, and they'll be able to click that if they don't like that particular ad, or they don't find it relevant, or don't want to see that type of ad again, and that will go as feedback to Facebook to help the ongoing management of these types of ads. And that works very similar to the way that traditional ads work on Facebook too. If you don't like an ad, you can press the X, and then in theory you might not see any ads from that domain or with that type of message again for you. Now, the ad itself will be marked as sponsored, but as you can see from the screenshot of the example that we've been given by Facebook, it's not going to be massively prominent. We're talking about a small grey bit of font there, so not obvious, as you can see. And that, might help things from Facebook's perspective, that people won't be so inclined to ignore it, because people, if they saw it was sponsored, may be more aware and wary not to actually click on the ads. So they're hoping, I guess, that this will just integrate in the newsfeed quite naturally, like you would see other posts, which is interesting. It's an interesting way of doing it, but I would also like to think that if users are seeing posts by pages that they don't like, that just their friends like, maybe they'll be wary as to why that content is showing in their newsfeed, so it will stand out to them. Now, there are strong rumours that it's going to integrate with mobile eventually. Now, mobile, I'm sure, is an area that Facebook are trying to integrate their ads into. It's not something that I can imagine them putting their traditional ads into anytime soon, just because of the limited space and how they could display that in the same way they do on their on PCs. But I can imagine them integrating this sponsored story ad in the newsfeed a lot more easier, because the news feeds on mobiles do look in a very similar way to how you would see them on a PC. So suddenly seeing a sponsored post in there probably wouldn't be so bad. So I expect something like that to come in, I guess, within the next few months. Now, in terms of my thoughts on the move itself by Facebook, it's a really interesting one and probably a little risky, because as you've seen with Facebook, whenever they make any changes, they tend to not go down so well with users, and the timeline is a great example of that, where people are always very wary of change, but eventually do obviously accept it and actually quite like using the new interface. But this is different in many ways, because they've never put adverts in the newsfeed before, so in that respect it is a very risky one for Facebook to do, and I think they have to do it quite cautiously. So I think the fact that there's only going to be one sponsor story ad per day is a wise move. Anything more than that, then users, if they start to see it inundated with ads, they're going to start losing trust in the information they're seeing in that news feed, and if you start doing that, you're playing a very risky game, and it could, ultimately that could cause people not to want to read stories in their news feed, or even steer clear of Facebook altogether. Also, brands have to be very careful. If you're using these type of sponsored stories, you run the risk that if you're being too prominent in people's news feeds at a regular basis, you run the risk that somebody might unlike your page or see you as being quite spammy, and so that could have a detrimental effect, as well as as much as it could have a positive effect on the exposure it gets for brands. So it's going to be interesting to see. Will this be the start of more ads that we see in Facebook? Will they start to integrate them more into the profile in prominent positions? We don't know. I'm sure it's something they wouldn't do lightly, but it'll be interesting to watch this space.